291 mole. When the little girl saw the money, she was slightly tempted. She could buy 2 pieces of fruit candy for 0.02 yuan. After she thought about it, she agreed. The little girl turned left and right. 2 minutes later, she brought Xiaoxing to the place where Yu Bing had been ambushed. "Brother, I picked it up here." Xiaoxing looked at the 3 forks in front of him. He didn't know which path Yu Bing had taken at that time, so he looked around to see if there were any strange marks or other things that Yu Bing had dropped. After a fruitless search, he bent down and asked the little girl, "When did you pick it up?" The little girl tilted her head and thought for a while. "It's been a while since I picked it up. I picked it up on the way to Xiao Meizi's house." Xiaoxing described Yu Bing's appearance again, but the little girl shook her head again to indicate that she had never seen her before. Xiaoxing didn't give up. He thought for a moment and continued to ask, "Did you see anyone along the way?" The little girl lowered her eyes and started to recall seriously. She even raised her finger and counted with 1 finger. "After I left the house, I saw Uncle Tang, Auntie Zhang, and that annoying person in my class. Then, I picked up the map and met Grandpa Zhao. Then, I went to Xiao Meizi's house. When I came out, I saw you on my way home." Xiaoxing grabbed the little girl's shoulder and asked anxiously, "You didn't see any strangers?" The little girl paused when she heard this. Xiaoxing stared at her nervously. This was the only clue he could find now. If this trail went cold, he wouldn't know how else to find her. The little girl thought of someone she had overlooked. The annoying person was talking to an unfamiliar man. "I've never seen that man around here." Xiaoxing's pupils dilated. It was very likely that Yu Bing had encountered something here and disappeared as a result. One more person meant one more clue. "What did he look like?" The little girl replied, "I didn't see his face. I only saw him carrying a snakeskin bag." "Snakeskin bag?" Xiaoxing felt even more uneasy. "Is the annoying person you're talking about your classmate? Bring me to him." A trace of unwillingness appeared on the little girl's face. "I don't want to look for him. He keeps pulling my hair in class." Xiaoxing was stunned for a moment. Then, he took out another 0.05 yuan and enticed, "I heard that the supply company has beautiful hair clips. You can buy them with this money." This was too tempting for the little girl. The last time she went to the supply company with her mother, she saw a hair clip that cost this much, but her mother didn't buy it for her. The little girl felt that it was worth it to get a pretty hair clip in exchange for a tug at the end of her hair. "All right. I'll bring you there." The 2 of them set off for the little girl's classmate's house. Then, the little girl took the initiative to call her classmate out of the house. Zhang Jin went downstairs in his patched clothes. When he saw Xiaoxing, he was stunned for a moment. He thought that the little girl had found her brother to take revenge on him, so he wanted to run home. Xiaoxing reacted quickly and grabbed Zhang Jin's arm. "I have something to ask you." After Zhang Jin was caught, he could only turn around and point at the little girl in fear. "Didn't she find you to beat me up?" Xiaoxing, who felt like he got dragged into the feud between 2 primary school students, felt very helpless. "I'm here to ask you something. Have you seen a man holding a snakeskin bag in this alley?" When Zhang Jin heard that he wasn't here to beat him up, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Are you asking about Brother Xiaoxing? I've seen him before." Xiaoxing was stunned. "The man you saw said his name is Xiaoxing?" Zhang Jin nodded affirmatively, but when he saw the name on the certificate in Xiaoxing's hand, he was stunned. "Both of you guys are called Xiaoxing?" At this moment, Xiaoxing was 100% certain that someone was plotting against them, so he asked Zhang Jin to tell him everything about the fake Xiaoxing. Zhang Jin told Xiaoxing everything that had happened today. "I was playing at my house this afternoon when he suddenly appeared in front of me and said that his name was Xiaoxing. He gave me 0.1 yuan as an errand fee and asked me to help him find a girl called Yu Bing. He said that he wanted her to go to the police station on Senghan Road. He even asked me to tell her how to get there." Xiaoxing felt his throat tighten. "What did he look like?" Zhang Jin replied, "He's very ordinary looking, but he has a mole at the corner of his mouth and 2 hairs on it." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 292 Call the police. Li De. Xiaoxing immediately thought of his name. He had seen his face during the previous pursuit. What else do you know? Zhang Jin shook his head. Today is the first time I've seen him. Later, I saw him in the alley and ran over to greet him. However, I saw that the snakeskin bag he was pulling was a little heavy and he was panting from exhaustion. After he replied to me, he left in a hurry. After confirming that it was Li Dao's revenge, Xiaoxing felt flustered. He didn't know anyone in City F, and the police station only accepted missing reports after 24 hours. After his parents passed away, this was the second time he felt that deep sense of powerlessness. However, Xiaoxing knew that he had to think of a way. There was only one outcome for a young girl caught by human traffickers: to be sold to some remote place and become the wife of an old man who couldn't get married. The other party might be in his 40s or 50s, or he might be disabled or mentally handicapped. In any case, he wouldn't be a normal man. Thinking about how Yubing was waiting for him to save her, Xiaoxing forced himself to calm down. When he saw the two children, he decided to report the case first. Regardless of whether the police accepted the report or not, he had to give it a try. I want to ask you two for a favor. Come with me to the police station on Sangin Road and tell the police what you just said. Children had a sense of fear for the police station, so the two of them hurriedly shook their heads. We're not bad people, so why should we go to the police station? Seeing this, Xiaoxing could only think of a way to calm them down first. He squatted down and looked at the two of them at eye level as he said, I know you're not bad people. That girl called Yubing is missing, so I have to go to the police station to get the police to help find her, but my testimony won't be convincing enough. You guys have to tell the police what you saw. Zhang Jin guessed that he had accidentally helped a bad person, so a trace of cowardice appeared on his face. I'm not going. Don't arrest me. Xiaoxing was already anxious, but he still continued to say patiently, why would they arrest you? You're also a victim. You were also deceived by that bad person, right? If you don't go to the police station to explain the situation, the police will think that you're in cahoots with him. You'll turn from a victim to an accomplice. Xiaoxing's trick was quite effective. Zhang Jin was so frightened that he immediately changed his mind. Then let's go quickly, or else the police will misunderstand me. The little girl didn't think much of it. She hadn't done anything bad, so wasn't afraid of the police and agreed to go with them. A few minutes later, they arrived at the police station on Sangin Road. Xiaoxing told them about how they had helped the police catch the human traffickers in City C, coupled with the words of the two children. The police here also contacted the police station where Xiaobing was in City C and obtained confirmation. Xiaoxing successfully got the police station to file a case, but he was also worried that the policemen here would delay things, so he raised the hypothesis that there might be more than one victim, in hopes of attracting their attention and getting them to investigate if there were any cases of missing women and children in the suburbs of the city. The police said that they would investigate and asked Xiaoxing to return to the guest house to wait for news. Xiaoxing didn't dare to place all his hopes on the police, so he returned to the guest house and called Zhang Li. Zhang Li promised to help him find connections and asked him to wait for the notice. His second call was to Wu Gang's father. Mr. Wu didn't expect this to happen, but he asked Xiaoxing to call again in 20 minutes. At this moment, Yubing had already been moved out of the city in an ox cart. After Yubing woke up in the snakeskin bag, she realized that she couldn't break free, so she gave up. The most important thing for her now was to conserve her strength. The car swayed. After more than half an hour, Yubing felt that the snakeskin bag she had been in was lifted. By the time she could see the world outside, the sky had already darkened. As Yubing looked at the unfamiliar man with a mole at the corners of his mouth and saggy eyes, she couldn't remember who he was. However, when she saw a girl in her 20s and two little boys in the same room, she immediately understood that she had encountered human traffickers again. Just as Yubing was wondering why she was so unlucky, the man spoke. B*TCH, do you not recognize me? As Yubing looked at the man, she didn't say anything. It wasn't her fault that she couldn't say anything. After all, her mouth was still stuffed with cloth. After the man helped Yubing remove the cloth, Yubing made a bold guess. Lida? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 293 group. The man smiled, revealing a row of slightly yellow buck teeth. You're quite smart. But then again, since you got my accomplice caught and ruined my plans, how can you not be smart? Yubing began to worry about whether or not Xiaoxing could find her. After all, they had never expected that Lida could escape so far away. After she thought about it, she felt that it was better to get some information first. You don't have a certificate, so how can you run so far? Lida revealed a disdainful smile. I can have as many certificates as I want. B*TCH, I'll find you a husband and let you live in hell for the rest of your life. A dorky-looking middle-aged man walked in. Mr. Li, I heard that you got another woman? Not bad. You're quite fast. The moment Lida turned around, he revealed a fawning smile. Brother Long, my nest was destroyed by the police because of this woman. I hope you can let me help her find a good buyer. After Brother Long glanced at Yubing's beautiful face, he suddenly became lecherous. No problem, but I want to play with her first. Li Dao's smile froze. Whether or not she was a virgin made a great difference in terms of the price. However, he was under someone else's control now. As long as he could get permission to punish Yubing, it was enough. As Yu Bing watched Brother Long walking towards her, she suppressed her panic and said calmly, "I'm on my period." Brother Long didn't stop. After all, Yu Bing wasn't the only woman who used such an excuse. However, when his hand touched Yu Bing's pants and felt the thick fabric inside, he knew that Yu Bing was telling the truth and his expression darkened. "Damn it!" Lida watched as Brother Long left. Then, he picked up the cloth and stuffed it into Yu Bing's mouth again. He stared at Yu Bing intently as he said, "Don't even think about playing tricks." Yu Bing observed that everyone in the room had their hands and feet tied behind their backs. The four of them each occupied a corner. The two children seemed to be unconscious and their eyes were closed, while the girl was staring at the ground in a daze. Yu Bing's bag had also been put away, and her watch was gone, so she didn't have anything she could use now. As Yu Bing stared at the moon through the window, she wondered what Xiaoxing would do when he discovered that she was missing. Xiaoxing forced himself to rest in bed for 7 hours before getting up because he couldn't collapse before he found Yu Bing. Yesterday, Mr. Wu found his old comrade, Jiang Heng, who had become the captain of the criminal investigation team of the municipal bureau after leaving the army. After learning about the situation from Xiaoxing, Jiang Heng escalated the case from the district police station to the city police station. Not long after Xiaoxing woke up, Zhang Li's call came. "Xiaoxing, I received some news. Some time ago, the army sent a team to track down a human trafficking group. I heard that in order to prevent trafficked people from running back to their homes, they like to commit crimes across provinces to avoid letting the police and their families track down those children and women who are claimed to have been bought from them. The leader is someone called Wang Long. I wonder if Lida is from his network. If he is, things will be easy." Xiaoxing clenched his fists tighter. "I'll think of a way to find out." In order to prevent the kidnapped women and children from attracting the attention of outsiders, the gang had an unwritten rule, which was to give them a bowl of drugged water before they left. Yu Bing hadn't had her tampons changed the entire night, so she felt very uncomfortable. When she saw Lida come in with a kettle, she said, "I want to go to the bathroom." Lida looked at Yu Bing suspiciously and didn't say anything. Yu Bing said weakly, "I haven't eaten all night. How can I have the strength to run? Moreover, I'm on my period. If I don't change my pants, they'll get dirty. Do you want to buy me new pants?" Lida grabbed Yu Bing's arm with one hand and lifted her up. After helping her untie the rope, he shouted, "Mrs. Wang, a woman wants to go to the bathroom." Soon, an ordinary-looking but muscular middle-aged woman walked in. Yu Bing said innocently, "I need my bag. My tampons are inside." Lida could only go next door to get Yu Bing's bag. When Yu Bing saw the man and woman in front of her, she didn't do anything else. She took the things she needed and spread them out for them to see. The woman called Mrs. Wang accompanied Yu Bing out of the house. Yu Bing realized that this was a small house with a courtyard, but she didn't see any neighboring houses around. Just now, she saw 7 to 8 men in the lobby. There were also 3 in the courtyard, which meant that there were more than 10 human traffickers hidden in this small house. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 294 Trail goes cold. Mrs. Wang was guarding the door after Yu Bing entered the bathroom. Yu Bing didn't plan to play tricks at this moment. The wilderness was filled with their people, so Yu Bing didn't plan to fight them head-on. It was useless, and she might even get her legs broken. At that time, she wouldn't be able to escape all the more. Yu Bing suspected that this Mrs. Wang was Brother Long's wife, but it still had to be verified. After leaving the bathroom, Yu Bing smiled at Mrs. Wang and said, "Can you find me a better family? Don't find me an old man." Mrs. Wang looked at Yu Bing in surprise. After all, this was the first time she had seen someone who wasn't afraid after being caught, could immediately adapt to the environment, and fight for preferential treatment for herself. However, she still didn't say anything. When Yu Bing saw that Mrs. Wang ignored her, she knew that this woman wasn't easy to deal with. She had to think of another way. Lida would definitely try to ruin her life. At that time, she might not have a chance to escape at all. At this moment, the others in the room had already been drugged. Yu Bing took it obediently and drank it as well. Brother Long looked satisfied when he saw this. This young lady is very sensible. Yu Bing smiled and said, "Brother Long, a wise person submits to circumstances. I understand this principle." Brother Long laughed when he heard this. "Interesting. You're quite bold. I like you." Yu Bing subconsciously looked at Mrs. Wang, who was looking at her. As expected, she could see a trace of jealousy. After Yu Bing confirmed their relationship, she didn't speak further and sat back in her seat obediently. Soon, Yu Bing fell unconscious again. Because she was on her period, if the boss of this group didn't touch her, the other lackeys definitely wouldn't dare to do anything to her. When she woke up again, it was already night. The food was sent into the room by another person. There was only salad and a bowl of sweet potato porridge. The children were already gone. Yu Bing only saw that the girl was still with her. In order to let them eat, their hands and feet had been untied. The girl's eyes looked hollow and listless. Only then did Yu Bing see the bruises under her long sleeve. After she glanced at the person smoking and chatting at the door, she asked softly, "What's your name? Where are you from?" The girl glanced at Yu Bing and was silent for a moment before replying softly, "I'm Gu Ting. I'm from City B of Jiang Province." Yu Bing nodded. She was from the same province as her and could be considered a fellow townsman. "Let's eat first. I'm also from Jiang Province. When were you abducted?" Gu Ting found Yu Bing's calm reaction very strange. Right after she had been kidnapped, she was resisting nonstop, so she got beaten up. Later, when she saw so many of them, she resigned herself to fate and learned her lesson. That was why she was no longer beaten up. It's been 5 days. They sold girls from out of town to Jiang Province, while they sold girls from Jiang Province out of town. There were 2 girls with me. They took them away the day you came. The fact that they could cross provinces meant that this group was definitely not a small one. It also meant that they were experienced enough to avoid the police's pursuit time and time again. Yu Bing couldn't help but feel discouraged. At this moment, Xiaoxing was with Xiaoxing. After Zhang Li found out that Li De and Wang Long, who was nicknamed Brother Long, were in cahoots, he explained the situation to his brother and brought Xiaoxing over. Coincidentally, Xiaoxing was the captain of the team in charge of the case. Xiaoxing looked at Xiaoxing, whose eyes were already bloodshot, and said, "Xiaoxing, go sleep." As Xiaoxing sat on the stool by the wall, his expression was cold, but the anxiety in his eyes couldn't be hidden. "I dream of her the moment I close my eyes. Tomorrow will be the 5th day she has gone missing. I'm afraid. She looks gentle and easygoing, but she's actually more stubborn than anyone else. I'm worried that something will happen to her." After Xiaoxing and the others had chased him to the suburbs of City F's Wenshan County, the informant's trail went cold. Xiaoxing patted Xiaoxing's shoulder with sympathy. He didn't expect Xiaoxing to fall in love with Yu Bing. Today was the 4th day of her abduction. Because Yu Bing drank the medicine obediently every time, was very cooperative in other aspects, and seemed like she only wanted them to find a good husband for her, the person who brought the medicine to her lowered his guard. Before she set off in the morning, she had only drunk half of it. The other half had been vomited onto the ground, her sleeve, and the gag. Therefore, she woke up very early today and overheard some of their plans. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 295 Domestic Violence. Today was the day she and Gu Ting would be sold. In the evening, 5 buyers would come and bid for them. Although Yu Bing didn't know where she was now, from their conversation, she found out that they were in a mountain village without any roads for transportation vehicles, so they could only walk. No girl was willing to marry into such a place. Most of the wives were obtained through human trafficking or exchange marriages, which was basically when people exchanged their wives. However, it was very difficult to escape after being sold to such a place. The people there were all in cahoots. As long as they saw anyone's wife try to escape, they would immediately capture her and send her back. This was so that when the future wife they bought escaped, others would help capture her as well. When Yu Bing saw the relevant news, she knew that as long as a family's daughter-in-law ran away, the entire village would look for her together. Moreover, they would usually be tied to the house with chains to prevent them from escaping. Even after the daughter-in-laws had given birth to a few children, some in-laws would still be worried. There were also cases of people being locked up for more than 10 years, so among so many people who had been kidnapped, very few could successfully escape. Yu Bing knew that tonight was her last chance to escape. If she couldn't escape, she would rather die than live such a debasing life. As usual, Yu Bing pretended to wake up at the usual time. No one suspected her. Soon, the sun set, and the 5 buyers came over. Yu Bing and Gu Ting were also untied so that the buyers could see them better. Gu Ting had been bought by a man in his 30s, while Yu Bing had been taken away by a man in his 40s called Dashin. The other party had even brought his mother along. The 60-year-old woman looked at Yu Bing like she was a commodity up for grabs. Dashin's mother didn't agree with her son choosing Yu Bing. She preferred the plumper Gu Ting, since she felt that curvy women could get pregnant easier, unlike Yu Bing, who was good-looking but way too thin. However, she was most worried that Yu Bing wouldn't be able to withstand her son's beating. If she died, she would have to spend money to buy another wife. At this moment, Li De walked to Yu Bing's side and whispered into her ear, "I specifically chose this man for you. His previous 2 wives were beaten to death. I hope you can live longer than them." When Yu Bing heard this, her eyes flickered. When she looked at Dashin, she realized that he was staring at her in anger, as if he had caught her cheating or something. When Yu Bing looked at Li De, who was deliberately getting closer to her, she immediately understood his motive. After Yu Bing raised her foot and stomped on Li De raised his hand in pain and wanted to slap Yu Bing, but Yu Bing said calmly, "Dashan has already bought me just now. If you dare to hit me, Dashan will ask you to compensate him." When Li De heard this, he could only give up and say fiercely, "All right. After you're tortured to death in bed by Dashan, I'll personally throw you into the mountain to feed the wild dogs." When Yu Bing heard this, although she didn't show it on her face, she was extremely nervous and was even more determined to find an opportunity to escape later. Worst case scenario, she would be beaten to death. In any case, she didn't want to die in the Dashan family's home as a captive. When Yu Bing left the small courtyard with Dashan and his mother, the sky was already dark. After Dashan took out the torch he had prepared and lit it, he slapped Yu Bing hard. Yu Bing was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth and her head and ears buzzed. Dashan was very tall and muscular. As he stood in front of Yu Bing, he said condescendingly, "If I see you talking to another man again, I'll beat you to death." Dashan's mother glanced at Yu Bing. She was already used to such scenes. Women had to be beaten up if they were disobedient. Women who misbehaved deserved to be beaten. Yu Bing lowered her head and gritted her teeth as she slowly stood up. When the mother and son saw Yu Bing's compliant attitude, they were satisfied. Women had to be more docile. Dashan's mother understood the principle of giving a carrot and stick, so she said to Yu Bing, "As long as you stay in our house obediently and give Dashan a fat son, you will enjoy a good life in the future." Then, she complained to her son, "You're not allowed to hit her before she gives birth to a son. The children of those two sluts from before were aborted by you, so I still don't have a grandson yet." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 296 Tiger. Dashan's mother was very displeased with Dashan for not having a son even at 32 years old. It wasn't easy for her to save up a little money, but it was used up by her son to buy a wife. Today was the first time they met, so they had to take her notch down to make her afraid, so that she wouldn't dare to run away. However, she couldn't let her son hit her again. Yu Bing pretended to be meek and docile as she said timidly, "Dashan, Mom, I'll definitely be obedient. I'll do whatever you guys ask me to do." Dashan bared his yellow teeth and looked at his mother proudly as he laughed loudly. "Mom, did you see that? She became obedient immediately after I beat her up." Dashan's mother became a little more pleased with Yu Bing. After all, her two previous daughters-in-law had been very unruly at the beginning. They only submitted after being beaten up for a few days. With this single slap, Yu Bing was subdued. She was much less troublesome. "Dashan, tie her hands up." Yu Bing immediately took the initiative to stretch out her hands to let Dashan tie her up. She even looked at Dashan shyly with her watery eyes. "Dashan, can you tie it a little looser? I've been tied up for a few days already, so my hands hurt." Yu Bing's voice was soft to begin with. The two previous wives were villagers before they were kidnapped. They looked rough and sallow, unlike Yu Bing, who was from the city. After Yu Bing went to the countryside to work for a few months, she kept herself well protected from the sun. Later on, she didn't even have to go to the field anymore, so she still looked fair and cute. Dashan's heart softened under Yu Bing's gaze. He lowered his head and saw that there was indeed a red mark on Yu Bing's hand, so he loosened it a little. When Dashan's mother saw this, she cursed Yu Bing for being a vixen. However, seeing that she was quite obedient, she didn't say anything in the end. The three of them began to walk home. Dashan walked in front while Yu Bing took the initiative to accompany Dashan's mother at the back. She kept calling her mother and saying all kinds of pleasant things to her. Yu Bing looked at Dashan's mother, who was beaming from ear to ear from her praise, and asked, "Mom, how much longer are we going to walk for?" Dashan's mother looked into the distance and said, "We've only walked less than a third of the way. It'll take at least an hour." Yu Bing nodded and pretended to be curious. "Mom, there are so many mountains here and the trees are so dense. If we go in, I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. There can't possibly be tigers here, can there?" Yu Bing looked at Dashan's mother in fear. Dashan's mother revealed a smug smile. "There are indeed tigers. This mountain is huge, so the people who live here don't dare to enter the mountain alone. If there aren't more than 10 to 20 people, they'll be courting death by entering the mountain." At this point, Dashan's mother looked at Yu Bing meaningfully. "Most of the women in our village are trafficked wives. Previously, in order to escape, some women ran into the nearby mountains. Later, that man mobilized the entire village to look for them, but they only found that woman's bloody clothes and some missing limbs. From then on, the women nearby became obedient." Yu Bing knew that Dashan's mother was saying this for her to hear, but she wasn't afraid. Dying in the mouth of a tiger was better than being a captive sex slave and fertility tool. However, Yu Bing still pretended to tremble in fear. I won't escape. I don't want to be eaten by a tiger. Along the way, Yu Bing kept looking around at the forest on both sides of the road, as if she was afraid that a tiger would suddenly appear. Yu Bing's timidity pleased the mother and son. However, Yu Bing was actually taking the opportunity to observe the surroundings and find an opportunity to escape. After walking for another 10 minutes, Yu Bing said to Dashin's mother in embarrassment, "Mom, I want to go to the bathroom." Dashin's mother frowned and glanced at Yu Bing. "Why are you so troublesome? Go to the bathroom when we get home." Yu Bing acted anxious. She clutched her thigh with her hand and kept crossing her legs as she said, "Mom, I can't hold it in anymore. I've been holding it in for a long time. I have biological needs." At this moment, Dashin turned to look at Yu Bing, who looked at him pleadingly. "Brother Dashin, I really need to pee." Yu Bing's face had swollen a little from the previous slap, and her hair was a little messy. She had a delicate appearance, which made her look even more charming under the moonlight. Dashin felt horny as he gazed at her. Thinking about how he could play with this woman tonight, he couldn't help but feel happy, so he said, "Mom, let her go." Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 297 escaped. Yu Bing nodded anxiously. "Mom, accompany me. I'm afraid." When the mother and son heard this, their vigilance relaxed substantially. Yu Bing and Dashin's mother entered the forest at the foot of the mountain. The trees in the forest were very tall, and the grass was half the height of a person. After finding a relatively flatter place, Yu Bing said to Dashin's mother, "Mom, I want to relieve myself. Help me untie the rope." Dashin's mother's expression changed drastically. She immediately poked Yu Bing's head as she said, "Little b****, do you want to escape?" Yu Bing replied with a long face, "Mom, I'm not trying to escape. It'll be smelly, so I'll be embarrassed if you help me lift my pants. Moreover, I'm on my period, so I can't trouble you." Dashin's mother sized Yu Bing up suspiciously. Then, she reached out and touched Yu Bing's lower body through her pants. When she realized that she was indeed wearing a tampon, her expression eased up. Then, she thought of the matter of consummating the marriage, so she shouted, "You be ***. Why are you on your period so coincidentally? How long will it be until it's over?" Yu Bing hurriedly said, "Almost. There are still 2 days left." In fact, Yu Bing only had 5 days of menstruation every time. Today was the last day, but Yu Bing lied without batting an eyelid. Dashin's mother didn't think too much about it, since her son could tolerate it for another 2 days. Thinking of Yu Bing's obedient and timid appearance previously, and how Yu Bing even took the initiative to let her follow her, she untied Yu Bing. At this moment, Yu Bing said in fear, "Mom, wait for me under that tree. Don't stay too far away from me. Let's keep talking later. This way, if wild beasts hear us, they probably won't dare to come over." As soon as Yu Bing said this, Dashin's mother completely believed that Yu Bing wouldn't run away anymore. She only said impatiently, "I know. Hurry up." As she spoke, she walked towards the tree. The spot Yu Bing chose wasn't too far or too close. Moreover, with the grass blocking her, Dashin's mother couldn't see what Yu Bing was doing. When Yu Bing saw Dashin's mother walk away, she hurriedly squatted down and took the initiative to find a topic to talk about. As Dashin's mother stared at the grass and listened to Yu Bing's words, she was very assured. As for Yu Bing, she squatted on the ground and wanted to choose a moderate-sized stone. As she spoke, she looked around. A few minutes later, she found a palm-sized stone not far away. Just as Dashin's mother was getting impatient from waiting, Yu Bing stood up and pretended to lift up her pants as she shouted, "Mom, I'm done." Yu Bing dusted her hands as she approached Dashin's mother. She acted like she felt refreshed after relieving herself. When Yu Bing was still a step away from Dashin's mother, Yu Bing suddenly looked at the tree behind Dashin's mother in fear. "Snake, snake." Dashin's mother rolled her eyes. "What's there to be afraid of?" As she spoke, she bent down to find a stick to kill the snake and bring it home. For the people in the mountains, snakes could serve as meat dishes. Seeing that Dashin's mother was bending down, Yu Bing quickly took out the stone at her waist and threw it at the back of her head. After Dashin's mother swayed twice, she fell to the ground with a bang. Yu Bing hurriedly searched through her pocket, inner pocket, sawls, and socks. These were classic places to hide money. As expected, Yu Bing found some money and stamps. She was even lucky enough to find a pickled vegetable pancake wrapped in tinfoil. Yu Bing endured the sour smell as she stuffed everything into her pocket. After taking away everything, Yu Bing hurriedly ran towards the mountain. As she ran, she remembered to erase her tracks. She had learned this move from Xiaoxing when she entered the mountain previously, but she didn't expect it to actually come in handy at this time. Yu Bing didn't run far. She climbed up a dense tree more than 100 meters away. Yu Bing could still vaguely see Dashin's mother, who had been knocked out. A few minutes later, a tall figure appeared in her field of vision. It was probably Dashin. He stopped there for a moment before carrying his mother away. After Yu Bing heaved a sigh of relief, she ate the pickled vegetable cake. She had only eaten a few sweet potatoes tonight and had just walked so far, so she was already exhausted. She was glad that she had recuperated a lot in the past year. Otherwise, it probably would have been quite difficult for her to escape. However, Yu Bing knew that it wasn't the time for her to relax. Dashin would definitely call the villagers to look for her, so she still had an hour left to find a safe place to hide. Wild beasts only existed in the deep mountains, so the possibility of tigers and wolves appearing at the foot of the mountain wasn't high. Yu Bing determined that her current location was definitely within the other party's search range. However, if she chose to take the main road and encountered the villagers nearby, she would definitely be captured. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 298 Elites. Caught in a dilemma, Yu Bing pondered for a moment and decided to find a hidden cave to hide in. If Dashin found the entire village to help, they would probably search the mountain directly. After Yu Bing looked up at the Big Dipper in the sky, she instinctively chose a direction to run in. Because she was in a hurry, Yu Bing didn't get rid of her tracks this time. 2 hours later, when she saw the few scattered torches in the distance, she panicked. Not to mention that the cave had yet to be found, this was completely different from the timing she had calculated. In fact, it wasn't that Yu Bing had miscalculated, but that Dashin didn't return to the village to get reinforcements. Back then, Dashin's mother had married Dashin's father through a marriage swap, so Dashin's mother's maiden family was in the nearby village. Dashin went to look for his uncle behind his mother's back. Dashin's uncle made a prompt decision. He asked his youngest son to look for the village chief of Dashin's village and asked him to send someone over. Then, he immediately mobilized the entire village's young adults to help his nephew find his wife. Yu Bing had delayed them by wiping away her traces previously. Otherwise, Yu Bing would have seen these torches half an hour ago. Yu Bing had no choice but to hide in the deep mountains. After an unknown period of time, Yu Bing was so tired that she could barely lift her feet and she fell hard. After Yu Bing fell, she accidentally discovered a small hole above the upper left side of her arm. Because there were a few large flowering plants blocking it, it was very well hidden. If Yu Bing had not been lying on the ground and looking down at it, she definitely would have missed it. Yu Bing couldn't care less about the injuries on her hands and feet. She was already exhausted, so she had to hide quickly. She pulled the plants away and climbed in. Then, she placed the plant in its original state. Because the cave was too small, Yu Bing could only curl up and lean against the wall of the cave. She planned to close her eyes and rest for a while. After I find this B***TCH, I'll break her legs and lock her up for the rest of her life. Dashin, she couldn't have gone deep into the mountains, right? That woman has been pretending to be obedient and timid in front of my mother and me previously. This means that she has thought of running away long ago. She knows that there are tigers in the deep mountains, but she still dares to run into the mountains. I think she's very bold. I'll have to trouble you guys. As long as we find her, I'll treat all the men in the village to meat. In fact, they were just helping each other out. After all, if someone else's wife ran away one day, he would need their help, which would return the favor. Therefore, treating everyone to a meal was unnecessary. But now that Dashin had said it, everyone became more enthusiastic and motivated. Dashin was going all out this time because he wouldn't allow a woman to play him like this. Even if he had to sell his mother's only silver earring, he had to find Yu Bing and torture her for the rest of her life. The commotion outside woke up the tired Yu Bing. Through the gaps in the plants, she saw that the sky was already bright outside. Yu Bing covered her mouth with both hands and moved deeper into the cave. On the other side, the subordinate Zhao Xing had sent out also contacted his informant again. After returning to the house that he was temporarily camping out in, he found Zhao Xing, who was talking to Xiao Xing. Captain, I just received news that Wang Long just finished a business deal last night and returned to the county city early this morning. Xiao Xing suddenly stood up, while Zhao Xing began to get excited as well. He planned to reel in the net tonight. They had been waiting for this group of people for almost a month. Wang Long was very cunning. Others had 3 burrows, but he had 10. The order from the higher-ups was that everyone in the group had to be arrested. In order to ensure that not a single person was missed, they had delayed things until now. After Zhao Xing gathered everyone in the living room, he lowered his head to look at his watch. It's 2:13 now. We'll set off at 3:15 and will arrive at 3:15. Team 1 will be in charge of guarding the periphery to prevent anyone from escaping. Team 2 and Team 3 will follow me to capture them. Team 4 will be on standby 50 meters away and assist in time. Team 5 will wait at the 5 openings we found previously. 2 people per opening. Start checking the ammunition now and make sufficient preparations for the operation later. Disperse. Although there were only 50 people in this operation team, all of them were elites. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 299 Rape. Zhao Xing turned to Xiao Xing and said, "Wait here." Xiao Xing refused without thinking. "Brother Xing, I want to go in with you. My martial arts skills might not be as good as yours, but I definitely won't hold you back. Moreover, you've seen my spearmanship before. I know how to shoot too." Xiao Xing had never received formal training before, so Zhao Xing was really worried about bringing him. The group of people following Wang Long will most likely be sentenced to death if they're caught. They're a group of outlaws with guns, so they'll probably fight to the death. Xiao Xing wasn't intimidated by Zhao Xing's words at all. He stared straight back at him and said, "Brother Xing, I can do it. My family has a shotgun and I've grown up using it. I can take responsibility for my own decisions." Zhao Xing knew Xiao Xing's ability, but he was afraid that he would be injured. However, seeing the determination in Xiao Xing's eyes, he finally gave in. Follow behind Team 2. Xiao Xing knew that those people would be brought back for interrogation, but the wait made him feel panicked. He felt that the sooner he saw those people, the sooner he would know Yu Bing's whereabouts. 3:15 a.m. Teams 1 and 3 were already standing in their respective positions. Zhao Xing made a gesture. When a team member saw this, he quietly climbed up the 2-meter-tall wall and jumped to the ground lightly. Then, he carefully opened the door from the inside, but it still made a slight sound. Zhao Xing shouted angrily, "Quick, arrest them." There were 5 rooms in the small courtyard. The 4 team members were in charge of searching one room. Everyone kicked open the door quickly. At this moment, most of them were still sleeping. "Get up. Raise your hands. Cover your head and squat on the ground." Accompanied by the light of the flashlights and shouts, the human traffickers woke up to see guns pointed at them. However, there were also people who were more vigilant. When the team members entered, a human trafficker in a room had already reached for a gun. When he saw the olive green outfit, he fired, so the first person to enter was shot. Fortunately, the other party's aim was off, and the team members were wearing bulletproof vests. After a chaotic battle, a human trafficker took advantage of the chaos to run to the courtyard. After Xiao Xing hit the other party's knee with a small stone in his hand, the human trafficker fell to the ground. After Xiao Xing strode forward and pressed his knee against the other party's back, he grabbed the other party's gun-wielding arm and smashed it against the ground. The gun fell out of his hand. Then, he pressed the human trafficker's hands against his back and caught the handcuffs Zhao Xing threw over. Xiao Xing's movements were very swift, so swift that the human traffickers couldn't react in time. Zhao Xing revealed a satisfied expression. 2 minutes later, everyone was handcuffed as they squatted in the courtyard. "Captain, Wang Long ran away. This is his wife. When we went in, we saw her sitting on the bed in a daze." Zhao Xing revealed a disdainful smile. Then let him enjoy the last few minutes of his life in the tunnel. In Wang Long's room, there was a tunnel that could lead to 5 different exits outside. It was an emergency countermeasure for the current situation. Everyone looked at Wang Long's wife curiously. She looked like an ordinary rural woman, but she looked very calm, as if everything in front of her had nothing to do with her. At this moment, Xiao Xing noticed a golden watch on the woman's hand. He immediately pulled the woman's arm and yanked off the watch. The color of the watch was very new, and there was the word YB on the side of the watch. Xiao Xing had seen Yu Bing carve it with his own eyes when they were in Sea City. Yu Bing said that there were too many similar watches on the street, so she had to make a distinction. Xiao Xing's voice was low, but the anxiousness in his eyes betrayed him. "Where is the owner of this watch?" When the woman heard this, she turned her head and sized up Xiao Xing as she asked calmly, "What's your relationship with her?" Xiao Xing replied, "Friends." The woman didn't answer his question. "You like her?" she asked again. Xiao Xing asked again with a cold expression, "Where is she?" The woman didn't hide it anymore and told him about the village where Yu Bing was sold to, Tunli Village. The woman looked at Xiao Xing and said, "Come here. I'll tell you a secret. It's very important." Xiao Xing looked at the woman suspiciously, but he didn't dare to miss out on anything. The woman waited for Xiao Xing to come closer before saying slowly in a low voice, "She was raped by Wang Long." Xiao Xing turned around and glared at the woman. The woman stared back at him without any guilt. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. 300 Lost and Recovered. Seeing Xiao Xing's red eyes and cold aura, Mrs. Wang felt a little smug. She couldn't let Wang Long die so easily. He had to atone for his sins. Xiaoxing felt that something was wrong with Xiaoxing and went forward to ask softly, what happened? Xiaoxing clenched his fists and shook his head. He couldn't say anything, since it concerned Yu Bing's reputation. At this moment, Wang Long was captured and brought back. When Xiaoxing saw this, he rushed forward and punched Wang Long in the face. No one expected this. When the team members came back to their senses, both of Wang Long's teeth were already knocked out. Xiaoxing hugged Xiaoxing tightly from behind and pulled him away as he shouted, "You're out of your mind. What are you doing?" After Xiaoxing was stopped, he remained silent and only glared at Wang Long. Wang Long was so frightened that he hid behind the team. Xiaoxing didn't know what was going on with Xiaoxing, but time was tight, so he couldn't be bothered to ask further. He brought Wang Long back to the temporary base to record his statement and interrogate him. Because Mrs. Wang was an informant that defected to Xiaoxing, everyone quickly found out the specific situation of a few villages from her. The 4 nearby villages were all Wang Long's big clients, so the villagers were very vigilant against strangers and even more vigilant against the police and soldiers. They were afraid that they would be discovered and that their wives would be released by the police. Although Xiaoxing was also anxious, after knowing that the situation in these villages was complicated, he understood that he couldn't be impulsive. He could only wait for Xiaoxing to come up with a plan before taking action. The scope of this operation was wide. Xiaoxing had applied for the support of 400 people from the police force in City C. There were only 4 teams participating in the rescue operation. The team leader of each team was in charge of a village with 100 police officers. The goal of this operation was to save the kidnapped women and children in the village. Wang Long and the others had committed too many crimes, so the 5th team continued to interrogate them in the city's detention center. The village with the most transactions and the most complicated situation was Tunli Village, so Xiaoxing participated in the rescue operation. In order not to alert the villagers or give them time to transfer the kidnapped people, Xiaoxing's plan was to take the mountain path. At dawn, the main group began to set off. As Yu Bing looked at the feet that had just passed by the hole, her heart was about to jump out of her throat and she didn't dare to move at all. It wasn't until 2 hours after the sound disappeared that Yu Bing crawled out of the hole. After getting her bearings, Yu Bing continued forward. After walking for more than an hour, she suddenly felt a little dizzy. Yu Bing knew that her hypoglycemia might have acted up, so she could only sit down and rest for a while. Yu Bing saw many small yellow fruits hanging on a short tree, and there were many traces of birds pecking. Although she didn't know what fruit it was, if animals could eat it, humans could basically eat it as well. Hence, she slowly stood up and picked a few. It tasted sour and sweet. Yu Bing simply ate the fruits as a meal. Just as she turned around and was about to leave, she saw Dashan walking towards her stealthily with dozens of people from afar. At the sight of this, Yu Bing ran in the opposite direction. *TCH, stop right there. Dashan immediately ran forward. Yu Bing felt that she had never run so fast in her life, but men were stronger than women after all. After more than 10 minutes, Yu Bing's speed was getting slower and slower. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. When Yu Bing turned around again, she saw Dashan's hand on her shoulder. She was anxious and afraid. The next second, Yu Bing's arm was grabbed. Dashan slapped Yu Bing's face. "How dare you run?" Last night was supposed to be his wedding night, but not only did he stay up the entire night, but he also had to use his mother's last pair of silver earrings as compensation. The more Dashan thought about it, the angrier he became. He slapped Yu Bing again, making her ears buzz. Dashan watched as Yu Bing returned to his control and revealed a smug smile. "Run? Why aren't you running anymore?" *TCH, I'll make up for yesterday's consummation now. Previously, you were flirting with Lida, so don't tell me you've already slept with a man before. Dashan was very suspicious. As Dashan shouted at her, his foul breath wafted into her nose. She endured the fear as she said with a trembling voice, "You can't touch me. I'm still on my period." Dashan was stunned for a moment. Then, he said indifferently, "What has it got to do with me?" Then, he grinned and revealed a wicked smile. "Since you dared to run, you'll suffer the consequences. I'll let everyone see how you beg for mercy under me later. This is the punishment for escaping." Yu Bing felt disgusted when she heard this and struggled violently. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.